one of the ones that I've always loved from you, and we talked about this before we got on air, I've talked to you about this throughout the years, was the cover of Better Than You that you did for MJF. So much to where when I first started watching AEW, I'm pretty sure I actually heard your version first. And by that, I mean, like, I never paid attention to his theme. I don't know why. I just never did. And for someone who writes entrance themes, it's kind of weird to say. But anyway, I remember hearing your version and being like, oh man, obviously it's sick when you listen to it. And then hearing it live, and I'm like, wait, that's not his theme. What happened? And then all of a sudden they're like, oh well, These Wolves did the cover of it, Darren did the cover of it. And I'm just like, man, this is such a cool one. And for you, you could choose all these different songs to do. What made you go, okay, cool, Better Than You is the one that I'm gonna go ahead and do?
It kind of like snowballed. So originally, like when like got into wrestling, like wrestling music, it was kind of by accident. So there's a YouTuber named Chris Danker. He's now Chris Danger and DPW and stuff like that. Like he's actually trained to be a wrestler. And
Cool.
but before that, he does like a lot of WWE 2K content. And he, at the time, I think it was WWE 2K19, he was like, I'm gonna do a new series. It's gonna be called Wrestle War. And I was like, hey, you're doing a new series. I have these songs. Would you want to use them as like an like a theme song for this thing? He was like, yeah. And he heard Enough Is Enough, and he was like, oh, this is awesome. He's like, I have an idea, and he rapped over it. Like, he's like, what do you think of this? And he did this, I remember it was always a dream. And then he does this whole thing. And I was like, that is so awesome. And I was like, wow. So he's like, can I use it? And I was like, yeah, go ahead. So he started using that, and it started getting traction. Like I get a bunch of messages from people who like, the WWE games saying, hey, I listen to your song all the time. Can I use it for my creative wrestler, on my YouTube video? I was like, sure, great. So that kind of spawned the idea of doing MJF when he was starting to come in, because this was uh AEW, like it kind of put the thought in my head. And then when Jericho, when I think it was the Cruise, that was the first time where they were actually singing Judas to him. And I was like, that'd be cool if we got that for MJF. Like I wanted to like be the person, like when you hear better than better, you're like, oh, this freaking guy coming out, like I wanted something like that. So yeah, it just kind of sparked, and I put the two together. I got AK40DEVIN, shout out to him, he was super great. And yeah, I was like, hey, I have this idea of just throwing it at the wall. Why don't we put some verses together and try to do this? And it worked out. Like originally when I asked permission from Mikey Ruckus, and he was like, yeah, go ahead, just like MJF is probably gonna block you once you put it out, but don't tag him in it. And so I didn't, and I was just like, okay, well, I'm putting it out, just out there. And then so I like going back, there was a podcast, it was the All Elite podcast. Shout out to Tiffany and Kyle Masters. I just reached out and said, hey, I have these songs. Would you want to put it as your theme song for the All Elite podcast? And they're like, sure. And then I was telling them about the MJF song, and they like were like, yeah, so we're gonna feature it on the show. Like I sent them the WAV file, like, yeah, we're gonna feature it on the show. I was like, oh crap. So they featured on the show, and they tagged MJF in it. And then I immediately got a DM from MJF, like, send me the song. And I was like, oh crap. So I sent him the song, and then I got like a fire emoji, and I was like, crap. Like he likes it, So that was like the biggest thing for me.
That's the seal of approval from MJF. He's like, send me the song, and it's a fire emoji as opposed to just a giant middle finger.
Yeah, yeah. He's used it like for like on Instagram posts, and like works out, it'll be like the song on like Instagram, so I know he's aware of it. But yeah, it's super cool to have him, give the endorsement